Welcome, everyone. Greetings. Welcome back to the Science of Farming show. I'm Sister Rashida Muhammad.
I'm Sister Melody Muhammad.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome back again. Thank you so much for joining us. Our goal here at Science of Farming is to encourage us to grow and connect us together so we can support each other. Because the ultimate goal is to do what the minister has asked us to do, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, which is to grow our own food. So hopefully you have found your home right here. Now, we have an action-packed show, information-packed show. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Now, if you all have any questions for us, go ahead and enter those questions into the chat. And as we go through the show, we'll look at and see if we have any questions to answer for you. Now, so today's show is going to be about growing soil, which is also known as composting. So you definitely want to know and have that information when you start growing so that you can grow in nutrient-rich soil. Now, to start off, what is composting for those who don't know? And the official definition is it's a process that converts organic materials into nutrient-rich soil through the natural decomposition process. So basically what you have when they talk about organic materials, you have something that's called green or nitrogen-rich materials such as food scraps. And then you have your browns, which would be your carbon-rich materials such as leaves and twigs and stuff. And we'll go further into that. But you also have your water that provides moisture and air to your compost pile. So that's what composting is. And those are some of the ingredients that you'll need to have in your compost pile. And as we continue, we'll talk a little more about the compost pile, its components, and what's actually happening scientifically in that pile that's happening, but we can't see it. So for right now, we're going to talk about what we can compost, because that's very, very important. So if you have your compost pile, these are the things that you can compost. Now, I am not composting outside in my backyard as of yet. I do have a preferred way of composting, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But what you can do, because we really want to encourage everyone to start right away. So what you can do is your table scraps, as I mentioned, is a part of composting. So I have in here some eggshells. I have in here some vegetables that we have, some carrots, some tomatoes. I have some celery. So that's the material that's called green material that you want to use in your compost bin. And I also have a pile of leaves that are outside that I'm going to add to my composting to get all those good nutrients in there. But if you want to jot this down, you can. So again, you saw the scraps that I have. You can use the crushed eggshells, and it's best to use the crushed eggshells. When you have them, just crush them, because it makes the decomposition process or decomposing process a lot easier. You also can use any kind of yard trimmings that you have. You want to make sure that they're kind of herbicide, pesticide free if possible. You can use coffee grounds, and you can use small branches. You don't want them to be too big. You just want to kind of keep them small so they break down easier. And believe it or not, we know that you can use cardboard, but you want to use something like pizza boxes, because pizza boxes, they don't have it doesn't have the tape, it doesn't have the glue, because you don't want that in your compost bin. So tape, glue, those type of things you want to avoid. And the pizza box seems to not have any of those things, or what could be toxic to your soil over time. And also some of those boxes have a wax coating on it, so you don't want that as well. Also, believe it or not, you can use your tea bags. You can use coffee filters. And Sister Melody, what about some other things that you've used or you know about that we can use for compost?
So unlike you, Sister Rashida, there are many ways that we can compost. And I always encourage people to bring and not waste their scraps. However, I don't keep mine in the house. I don't have a lot of freezer space or a lot of refrigerator space. So I'm a little different the way I do it. So I take all of those things outside, and a lot of composting things that I use are the things that I use. Everybody knows that I make carrot cakes, and I have all of these zucchini, onions, carrots, and all kind of things of that nature. So these are the things that we have every day in our home if we cooking. Some of us cooking, some of us not cooking. But if we cooking, we're gonna have a lot of the things that you would compost. So again, I take my scraps and I take them out back in my backyard. And I have some photos to show you of some of the things that, I use as a means of composting and how it looks back there. So we're going to pull up a few photos and I can explain to you. So these right here are the carrots that I use for my carrot cakes. And I use, carrots and onions and celery and different things, as I'm cooking. So I would throw them right out back into a pile. And we're going to show another picture. So that was just yesterday that I took those fresh, that is the nitrogen that we would use. And then I covered it. So that was before, and then that's the after picture. So my neighbors won't have to look in my backyard and it's an eyesore. So it's camouflage. Some of the reasons that we camouflage it is so the squirrels and other rodents won't be attracted to our compost bin, as it's going. So this particular bin here has been going for a few years now. So I don't have the problem with raccoons or foxes and different things coming into my yard, or my neighbors have never complained because, again, it's camouflaged. And what I do when we cut the grass, we take all our grass shavings and throw it on top. When the fall come and all the leaves come, we throw it on top. So when I look into my compost bin and I take a shovel, we have a picture there, and you can actually see at the bottom of my compost bin some worms. So the worms, there is a picture of another type of compost bin that we have. And this particular bin is for covering, and it's just the air there is air to get inside of that particular bin there. So we use compost bins if we have to, or you can just throw it out freely if you have space in your backyard. And that picture that I first showed you was just me throwing it out back. So the other picture is bins that I receive from different workshops that they have, and they give you free compost bins. So if you in an area and they have compost classes, they usually offer you compost bins free, where you can take, your scraps from your house and then you can cover it up. There's another photo there of a compost bin, the same one, but it's covered. So we're going to pull that one up in a minute, where we can show the photo of their compost bin. But composting is important. I tell my children every time that, I'm working with children that you want to be able to come home, and after, you have dinner, you want to know things you can and cannot compost. And we want to teach them how to take care of the land and take care of our environment as well. So Sister Rashida, that is some of the things that, I'm doing, as when it comes to composting.
Yes, ma'am. You covered so much. Now, what we talked about, what we can compost, but we know that we can also contaminate our soil. So what can we not compost?
Okay, so things that you don't want to compost. You don't want to compost chicken bones, fish, greasy old sandwiches. You don't want to compost things like potato chips. Most of the things you don't want to compost are the things we shouldn't be eating anyway. So you don't want to attract rodents to your compost bin. And those are the type of things that would attract them. So if you have barbecue sauces, and you have chicken from your barbecue. Those are the things that you don't want in your compost bin, because again, they attract rodents and stuff. They don't break down, and it's not nutrients that we want inside of our compost.
Right, very good. Now, I know that you were trained by Will Allen, and you have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
few certificates. So, did he add any additional information about composting, the do's and don'ts?
Yes, ma'am. So when we came back from the training that we had from Will Allen, and we made our very first compost bin, what we did was he always told us that, most of the things, if you build relationships with people, you'll be able to get most of these things free. So the first thing we did, he taught us how to make a compost bin, and this is a 8-month to a year process. But what we do is you take 4 pallets, and you put those pallets together into a square, and then you take some hard wire, and around the square inside, where if the compost that you put in there don't fall all over the place. And what I did is, and when I say we did this in Chester. We went to the farmers markets, we went to people that we knew that was growing food. I went to the senior houses, and we went to the missionary places where people generally throw out food that they don't want anymore, and that's gotten old and rotten. And we got that, gathered it up. I would see people cutting down trees. I stopped them in the middle of the road. Can you dump that pile of wood chips over here, sir? So we had to use that. And what we did was, it was like a lasagna. So in our lasagna, we had layers. So we would have, like, I want to say 6 layers of nitrogen, and then we have 3 layers of carbon. Then we have 6 layers of nitrogen. Then we have 3 layers of carbon. So we would keep mixing that pile up. So that's how we end up getting the majority of our things that we needed for our very first compost bin free. So that particular one, we didn't turn it, because the more you turn compost, the faster it breaks down. So we didn't turn that particular one. But after a year later, when we came back, at the bottom of that, you can see how everything started to break down. And that's how, you make your own soil. And it was just so beautiful enough that, you use that as fertilizer. You use it on your plants. You can use it on your vegetables. You can use it in your landscaping. And this is just things that we need to do to just respect our land, respect our environment, and just, have a healthier soil.
Yes, ma'am. And I know on the compost piles that I've seen, that they don't even like for cheese to be in there.
No
Anything,
cheese,
yeah, anything that will attract.
no milk.
And also they don't even like diseased plants. If you have diseased plants, they really don't like that to go in there. And also, I talked earlier about wood can go in there, but it has to be that untreated wood, because you can't put that painted wood in there, or the wood that's not treated either. You can't.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
I talked about tea bags, but also you cannot put those dryer lint, those dryer sheets in there. You can't put those in there. You don't want that in your compost bin. And also, even when you put something like a pizza box, if it has a sticker on it, you want to make sure you remove that sticker on there, because you don't want those stickers going into your compost bin as well. Anything else on that, Sister Melody?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So we were taught, you're absolutely right, when it comes to if you get these flyers in your mailbox, the shiny paper, you don't want to use that. You can use newspapers. Hate to say it, you can use final calls, but you can use coffee grinds, and coffee grinds really help speed up that process. And beer brewery, the brewery that you get from beer factories or breweries, that particular, I want to say it's like a grain, but it's so strong that it helps to speed up that compost as well. Break it down, and before you know it, you really have some really, compost that's breaking down. So the more you shake it or the more you turn it is going to be the factor in how long it takes to really turn into the soil. So it's a process. I don't want people to think that it's going to happen overnight, because nothing happens overnight.
That is true.
Everything is a process.
And even though I don't have a compost pile in my backyard, what I did when I had my raised bed then, and it was pretty tall, like waist high, what I had a relative do was go to a composting site and pick up the soil for me that had already been, had already turned and I had all the good nutrients. And I remember it was early on in my gardening. And when they brought it to our house and dumped it, I was so excited. And I went out there and I'm with this shovel and my husband and my son, and we're, loading up the wheelbarrow to take this to the raised bed that I have. And
Yes.
Sister, worms. It was loaded with worms. And I am, Lord, you talking about somebody who had to make a quick adjustment. I couldn't do it. I had to gather myself for a minute. And then I remember our minister talking about, and even his daughters talking about those worms, and they're jumping, and that means the soil is good. So eventually I got over there. But I do want to prepare our audience that when you compost, or if you go to a composting site to pick up a truckload of compost, expect to see worms. And that's a very, very good sign.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, you're absolutely right, sister. When you don't see worms in your compost, then you would be a little concerned sometimes. Now, I personally love dealing with the worms. So I sent you some pictures over also. Hopefully we could load them. So children, you have a few that sometimes their mothers will say, oh, don't touch that worm. But the majority of them, they love worms. They love seeing the worms in the soil. They love picking them up. They love just, I used to have my little granddaughters come over, and the first thing they used to say is, oh, can I see the worms? Can I see the worms? So I enjoy teaching. Worms purify the soil. So in our compost bin, we put them at the bottom. Then they work their way up to the top, and we'll explain that in another show, which will be vermicomposting.
Right. Now, you mentioned children, and I know you've worked with children. And so how do you teach them about composting? Because we've talked about that, and I thought that was so interesting.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ooh, pardon me. I don't know how that happened. So, yes, ma'am. When my grandchildren or my children come over, and I'm cooking for them, I'm always teaching or striving to teach. And I show them, after you eat this apple, what you going to do with it? Where do it go? So we want to be able to show children the benefits and the importance mainly of composting, and what you could compost and what you can't compost. So they automatically know when I say something like, okay, can you go put this in a compost pile? They know what to do. They know what it is. And when I'm teaching children, afterwards, after, the class is over, I ask them, what's compost? What are 3 things that you can compost? What are 3 things you shouldn't compost? Where should you use your compost bin? How we could get started and things like that. And actually, when we first started in Chester, the sisters was coming up there with their compost to help us build our compost bin. And that was so beautiful. I remember them coming up there with their little plastic bags, and just having, helping us to build our compost bin.
Yes, ma'am. And when we were talking about children, it reminded me of what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has said. He had said, he talks about this in part 36 of The Time and What Must Be Done. He talks about farming quite a bit. But I was reading a Final Call newspaper article, and he was talking about how there's a gap. You have these older farmers who are essentially, and I'm paraphrasing, aging out, which means there's nobody coming up afterwards. You don't have any teachers. You don't have any youth that are interested in agriculture. So he was saying, who's going to close the gap? And I was so delighted when I read that, because that's exactly what this show is about. Closing the Gap, that's the name of this platform, but it's also what this show is intended to do, to close the gap for those who are interested in farming, but yet a little intimidated, haven't started yet to plant anything. We're trying to show you can actually start. And again, it's as simple as starting with this compost, collecting your things in the freezer until you can get a compost bin. And Sister Melody, can you tell them where they can get a compost bin? And we're going to put up a picture of a compost bin, actually.
Yes, ma'am. And again, we are, these are three of the compost bins that I have, and I got all three of them 55 gallons free, as you can see there. And I got them free from just taking classes. The white container here is a food grade container I got from a garage. I asked them, can I have it? And I was collecting water in that. But these bins right here that's up in the picture, they are closed. So say if you're in an apartment or you're in a neighborhood and you cannot really do the things that I'm doing, just throw it out there. That little door right there at the bottom is where you would take the compost out. But that's it. So at the top part, you would just, open it up, take it, you're going to get everything in there. And sometimes what you can do when it's going to rain, you could take the lid off and you can just allow it to breathe and get wet, or you can wet it with a hose as well. But for those of you who are, you don't have to get the 55-gallon bucket to start. You can get another type of garbage can, I want to say, or you can get a plastic bin, and you can just start wherever you at. Everybody is at different places. Everybody's dynamics are totally different. So just long as we get started, long as we start teaching the youth about composting, especially our 2-year-olds, 3-year-old children, we want to just get them to start speaking the language. We want them to get them to start understanding that everything is different now, and we can't trust the stores today. We can't expect to get food like we used to and think it's going to be all right. So we're going to do these things that's going to help us in the future, and hopefully our 10 and 11-year-olds will be growing food for us.
Yes, ma'am. And that's a very good idea, because that's something that we really push here, get the youth started and trained. My son is helping in this area also. And I looked up, I was on the Environmental Protection Agency website, and I saw this interesting fact I thought I'd share. It says that an individual wastes 164 pounds of food each year, and only 4% of that waste is actually composted. And that is entirely too much waste. Can you imagine how much food you can grow for 164 pounds of waste per person? So you can grow a lot of food with just that. And that's just one member of the family. So multiply that times 4 if you have 4. I want to talk very quickly, because we are coming to the end of our program, believe it or not, the benefits of composting, because we really want to encourage people to get started right now. So I know that some of the benefits of composting is that soil, your plant retains a lot more moisture, so you don't have to water it as much. It does stabilize the structure also when you compost of your soil. And actually, it reduces the need for like fertilizers and your pesticides. So anything else on that?
Well, you really covered this, sis. I mean, a lot of times we're spending a lot of unnecessary money for things we don't have to. I mean, let's just be real. A lot of times they asking us to buy this, buy that, do this, do that, for this and that and that and this. And in truth, we have, and God said that he gave us everything that we needed. And he did. We just have to turn to the earth, and we have to, have these different type of programs where we can help each other to understand how, we could use nature to get through all of this. Because again, it's not rocket science. We don't want anybody to go away thinking that they can't do it. Because again, like Will Allen taught us, it's 100 ways to skin a cat. You don't have to be a little anal about anything. You just have to experiment. And that's what science is. It's experimenting. It's not just like, you mess up and that's it, and you go home and you cry. No, if we don't have success because something happened, you're going to just try again. But composting and getting your soil together, sister, will eliminate a lot of other things further down the road. And
Right.
I know some people that have expensive perennials, and their perennials don't last 10 and 20 years. You can have asparagus plant that can last 20 years. But if you don't have good soil, guess what? It's not going to last 20 years.
Right.
So it's not expensive to start composting.
And I'm so sorry to interrupt. Are you finished, beloved?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I was thinking when you were talking about the beautiful thing that's actually happening in the soil that we don't see is that those microorganisms that are in the soil, when you start feeding it water and you start turning it, they feed on the actual products that are in the soil, the leaves, the scrap food. And then from there, when you water that pile, because you do have to water it, it helps them digest the materials that they ate. And then when you flip that soil, it actually gives them a lot more air to breathe. So there is a very scientific process that's happening in that soil that works to our benefit. Now, very quickly, we're going to go ahead and jump right into checking to see if we have any questions. Have we received any questions? I know one of the questions that that someone did ask me was about the rodents, and you actually covered that. Oh, here's one from Brother Avrians. Assalamu alaikum, family. How much space would you say is required to farm and make your own soil? Good question. Thank you for your question.
Did you want me to answer that?
Yes, ma'am. Because I don't have a compost pile in my backyard. I'm going the bin way.
Well, brother, the next I'm just lost today. So our next program, we're going to talk about container gardening. And container gardening is going to show you, brother, that you don't need, you can have a 1 bedroom and you can compost, or you could grow some stuff in your 1 bedroom. So it just depends on, if you're going to get any sunlight, or if you're going to use the LED light, if you're going to take your plant in and out of your house throughout the day. So we can't use space as a means of not being able to grow anything. So that's one of the myths that we want to just get out the way right away, brother. We definitely do not want you to ever think that you don't have enough space to grow something. So hopefully we'll cover that a lot in our next program.
And he was talking about the space you need to grow soil. I don't think it can be up to you, large or small, because it depends on if you're going to grow it by just throwing it on the ground and then putting your brown on top and then putting your food and then a layer of brown. That's that lasagna effect. So you really don't need a lot of space for that at all. Or again, you can grow it in the bin, which is pretty round. It's like a 55-gallon bin. So you really don't need a lot of space at all to grow your soil. And then this is from Kulsum Akbar. Things that are raw are better than cooked. I believe that's supposed to say cooked food. It depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about going into the soil, I believe the compost bin can have both cooked and raw, correct?
Well, again, sis, when it comes to the composting,
it's going to attract.
You don't have to worry about being perfect.
Right.
We don't have to worry about being perfect. Long as we're not throwing things in there like, again, mustard and ketchup and Frank's and all of these things that we shouldn't be eating in there. But they will eventually break down. They just won't break down as fast as we would like them to. And plus, we don't want to attract different things to our compost bin. And we want to keep our areas clean as possible. So that's another reason. Wow,
those are very good questions. And believe it or not, we're right at the end of our show. Wow, time is flying so fast. But we hope we inspired you and encourage you to grow something. Connect with each other. There are people that are around the mosque or in the mosque that are probably growing as well. Again, if you're not a part of the Ministry of Agriculture in your mosque or study group, join that, be a part of that, spearhead that. And then reach out to us and we can post some of the things that's going on. Right now, I do want to, if you have any questions that we were not able to get to, please email us at scienceoffarming19@gmail.com. scienceoffarming19@gmail.com. We thank you so much for your time. There is a flyer that I do want to have posted very quickly about an upcoming event that will be held in Atlanta. It's called Muhammad's Day Meet and Greet. And there they will have a lot of artists going on with the Ministry of NOI Arts and Culture. And down in the bottom on the left side, they will have an agriculture aspect to this. So please join in on the fun. So if you all can join us next week, our next show is going to be about vermicomposting and container gardening. So please join us and bring your questions, and let's have some fun, family. Assalamu alaikum.
Happy